In this episode, we focus on the moment in the account lifecycle that is easiest to neglect and most painful to regret, because deprovisioning is where organizations either reclaim control or quietly accumulate risk. Deprovisioning means removing access that is no longer justified, and that includes disabling accounts, revoking permissions, ending sessions, and cleaning up all the hidden ways an identity can keep access even after the person or purpose is gone. When you are new to cybersecurity, it can feel like deprovisioning is simply turning off a login, but in real environments, access tends to spread across many systems, groups, tokens, and integrations, so the work is broader than it appears. Attackers love leftover access because it is legitimate access, and legitimate access often bypasses many security alarms. By the end of this discussion, you should understand what orphaned access is, why lingering entitlements are so dangerous, and how clean deprovisioning depends on discipline, evidence, and tight coordination with business events. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Orphaned access is the situation where an account or permission remains active even though the original owner or business purpose no longer exists, and it is one of the most common sources of silent risk in identity systems. Orphans can appear when an employee leaves, but their account is not disabled promptly, when a contractor finishes a project, but their access is never removed, or when an application is retired, but its service account continues to exist with permissions that nobody remembers granting. The danger is that these orphans are often invisible in daily operations because nobody is actively using them, which means nobody complains and nobody notices. Over time, orphaned access becomes the background noise of an environment, and that background noise is exactly what an attacker wants, because it provides places to hide. On the exam, scenarios that involve unauthorized access after termination or unexplained activity from dormant accounts often point straight to weak deprovisioning processes. Lingering entitlements are slightly different from orphaned accounts, and understanding the difference makes your thinking sharper. An entitlement is any permission granted to an identity, such as membership in a group, the ability to access a file share, a role in a cloud platform, or the right to approve changes in an application. An account can be disabled while entitlements still exist in systems that use tokens, cached credentials, or replicated directories, meaning access can continue in unexpected ways. Entitlements can also linger when someone changes roles and loses their old job duties but keeps old permissions, which is a form of privilege creep that never got corrected. Clean deprovisioning, therefore, means removing the account and unwinding the permissions, not just flipping one switch and assuming everything is safe. On the exam, better answers usually recognize that deprovisioning must include permission removal and session termination, not only account disablement. The most reliable deprovisioning processes are tied to authoritative business events, because business events provide the triggers that identity systems can trust. When a termination is recorded, when a contract end date arrives, or when a project closes, those events should drive deprovisioning without relying on someone to remember to send a message. This is important because manual reminders are inconsistent, and inconsistency is the enemy of controls. If deprovisioning is based on informal communication, it will fail more often when the organization is busy, when managers change, or when the person responsible is out of office. By tying deprovisioning to formal events, the organization turns identity cleanup into a predictable workflow instead of a hopeful habit. On the exam, when asked how to prevent orphaned accounts, the strongest reasoning usually involves integrating deprovisioning with human resources and vendor management processes rather than relying on ad hoc requests. A clean deprovisioning workflow starts with immediate access shutdown, but it does not end there, because access lives in more places than a single directory. The initial action is usually to disable interactive access so the account cannot log in, and that step should happen quickly because time matters. After that, the workflow should address the places where access might persist, such as active sessions, remembered devices, application tokens, and privileged group memberships. This is where environments can surprise beginners. because a person can be unable to log in yet still have a valid session token in a browser or an application integration that continues to function. Clean deprovisioning includes forcing signouts, revoking tokens, and removing or rotating credentials for accounts that are used by services. On the exam, questions that involve lingering access often reward answers that include revocation and session control rather than focusing only on directory disablement. Service accounts require special attention during deprovisioning because they are rarely tied to human lifecycle events, yet they often outlive the projects or applications they were created for. When an application is retired, the service accounts and credentials associated with it should be identified, disabled, and removed, and the permissions they held should be cleaned up as well. The challenge is that organizations sometimes fear disabling service accounts because they are unsure what depends on them, which is a sign that governance and ownership were weak at creation time. Clean deprovisioning for service accounts depends on having documented ownership, purpose, and dependency mapping, so that retirement is a planned event rather than a risky guess. On the exam, when asked how to reduce risk from service accounts, the best answer often includes lifecycle ownership and planned retirement, not just strong passwords. Administrative accounts also demand more careful deprovisioning because their privileges make them high-value targets even when they appear unused. If a person leaves the organization and their administrative account remains active, the risk is far higher than if a basic user account remains active, because an attacker could gain deep control quickly. Clean deprovisioning should therefore prioritize privileged identities, ensuring that admin access is removed promptly, privileged group memberships are stripped, and any shared secrets associated with the role are rotated if necessary. This is also where separation helps, because if admin accounts are separate from user accounts, deprovisioning can be more precise and auditable. On the exam, a scenario that involves high-impact access after a departure typically points to failures in privileged deprovisioning, and correct answers focus on rapid removal and verification for privileged identities. Shared accounts create a unique deprovisioning problem because you cannot deprovision one person from a shared credential without changing the credential for everyone. That reality is one reason shared accounts are discouraged, because they make offboarding messy and increase the chance that access remains with someone who should no longer have it. If shared accounts exist, clean deprovisioning often requires credential rotation, access reviews, and in some cases replacement of the shared account with individually assigned identities over time. Even when replacement is not immediate, governance must treat shared credentials as controlled exceptions with strict oversight. On the exam, if you see a scenario where a former employee still has access because they knew a shared password, the underlying issue is not only deprovisioning, but also the presence of shared accounts in the first place. Deprovisioning is also about data stewardship, because accounts often own data, files, mailboxes, and application objects that must be transferred or retained. If you simply delete an account without considering what it owns, you can create operational disruptions or lose important records. Clean deprovisioning, therefore, includes a controlled handoff of ownership where appropriate, such as reassigning file ownership or transferring responsibility for an application configuration. This is a governance issue as much as a technical one, because it requires decision-making about what data is retained, who becomes the new owner, and how retention aligns with policy. On the exam, questions sometimes test this nuance by presenting a choice between immediate deletion and controlled disablement with data transfer, and the correct answer usually preserves security while maintaining operational continuity. Verification is the step that proves deprovisioning actually happened, because turning off access is only valuable if you can demonstrate that access is truly gone. Verification might include confirming the account is disabled, confirming privileged memberships are removed, confirming tokens are revoked, and confirming there are no remaining active sessions or application permissions that still recognize the identity. The key idea is that deprovisioning should be treated as a closed-loop process: trigger, act, verify, and record. Without verification, organizations can believe they are safe while hidden access persists due to replication delays, system errors, or overlooked entitlements. On the exam, when asked what makes a deprovisioning process mature, the presence of verification and evidence is often the deciding factor. Metrics and reporting help keep deprovisioning honest, because they reveal whether the process is consistently timely and complete. Useful measures include the time between termination and account disablement, the number of dormant accounts that remain active beyond a defined threshold, and the number of privileged accounts that exist without recent use or review. Trends in these metrics can highlight systemic gaps, such as delayed notification from human resources or inconsistent offboarding for contractors. Reporting these metrics to governance stakeholders reinforces accountability because it turns deprovisioning from an invisible back-office task into a measurable control with clear expectations. On the exam, maturity is often reflected in the ability to demonstrate performance against defined timelines rather than simply claiming that offboarding occurs. To conclude, clean deprovisioning eliminates orphaned access and lingering entitlements by treating offboarding as a disciplined, evidence-driven workflow rather than a single disablement step. Orphaned accounts create silent risk because they are forgotten keys, and lingering entitlements create hidden risk because permissions and tokens can outlive the visible account. Reliable deprovisioning is triggered by authoritative business events, prioritizes privileged and high-risk identities, includes token and session revocation where needed, and ends with verification and documentation. When you can explain deprovisioning this way, you are demonstrating the controls mindset the exam expects, because you are showing that security is not only about building access, but also about reclaiming it with precision when it is no longer justified.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.